Welcome to Slice Property Made Possible. This season is powered by New Zealand Home Loans, local mortgage mentors who have been helping Kiwis achieve their financial goals for 27 years with proven results. The thing I love about NZHL is the mortgages are tailored for you with ongoing personalised service, coaching and tools to put you in control. It doesn't end with buying your property, they continue to help you pay down any loans and build your wealth, which can't be said about all advisors. This season, we will be playfully roasting everyday buyers and experts so you can learn from our mistakes. Head to today's episode notes to get access to our free home buyers software and your very own NZHL advisor. Welcome to the show, Knight. We're here for another episode of Slice Your Property podcast, and we've got Knight, founder of Relab, joining us today.
Hey everyone.
So we're going to dive straight in with your first home journey.
Okay.
What can you remember about that experience?
It was quite a while ago. It was 2021. I remember the February earthquake from Christchurch, which was very, very sad. And around that time, I was looking for a home, but not very committed. I think the earthquake sort of prompted me to start looking for a home, and I had some set criteria in my mind. I had 2 or 3 bias agents who were taking me around to see open homes. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I had very little experience in terms of having a set strategy as a first home buyer. So I had a few mistakes.
Yeah.
But it's found memories.
Yes, exactly. And you learn.
Yes.
So I guess with that first home, didn't have a strategy in place. What did that mean, or what was the impact of not having a strategy in place?
2 things. Number one, I had no idea about the whole end-to-end process. What's involved? From the moment you go into an open home to the negotiation strategy to what would happen after you've signed the agreement with settlement process.
They just move you into a room, ask you for the $1 million, and you sign on the dotted line. It's quite overwhelming, though, right?
It was quite overwhelming,
and that's definitely where we're stepping in with the slice process and the end-to-end journey. But yeah, do you think there were challenges in particular along that process for you? Like, what was due diligence like? Did you do due diligence? Did you know what you were doing when trying to attempt that?
No.
Yeah, flat out no.
No, and one of the mistakes that I made at that time was I didn't do a builder's report. Apologies, I did. I did go with a building inspection report, but that report didn't pick up 2 key issues with the home.
So relied heavily on whatever a builder said. Did you do your due diligence on that builder? I think this is something I was having actually a client call literally just before recording this episode, and we were going through actually which of these different builders, what are the benefits of their reports. Some of them are actually very shoddy, not trying to drive hate towards any of the builders, but it can be the difference between you deciding to go ahead with a purchase or not. So really actually making sure you're getting the right builder who's giving you the right advice.
Correct, because at the time I went to this open home. The home looked quite good and attractive, kind of ticked a few of the boxes. And the agent, I remember at the time, was trying to say to me, don't put too many clauses on the conditions, but I just, your gut. My gut was, no, at least put a builder's report and finance. Those were the 2 conditions. And then I panicked because I didn't know any building inspectors at the time. I asked for a friend who referred me to this builder. He was an older gentleman. He was very thorough, but I think the technology he had at the time was just a small handheld meter to test moisture around the window frames. He didn't have any other tools, and he actually struggled to get into some of the spaces underneath the roof. And later on, we found we had a leaky bathroom floor situation. It was an older 1970s house, but nonetheless it was not picked up from the report. And
obviously that came with a cost that you obviously probably hadn't planned for, in terms of, I think that's the important thing about getting a building report is sometimes you can take on something that's wrong with the home. If you're at least aware of that, you budget for that, and you know that you can afford to kind of fix that up.
Yeah.
But without that awareness, did you have the budget? How did you manage that?
Yeah, no, not initially. So I actually had to live with a leaking bathroom floor situation for 6 months.
Yeah.
Before I can afford to get someone in and fix it properly.
Yeah, so you bought a pool, a paddling pool.
Yes. Yeah, so that was one mistake that we
Yeah.
made at the time.
Yeah, it is a bit tricky when you're rushing around and trying to find the right partners, but I think the lesson in that is actually setting yourself up when you're not under pressure and not under stress with the right team. So when you're just starting out on the journey, getting the team around you so that you've got time to do that due diligence and work through those things rather than kind of scrambling around to find someone and anyone that then's, you know, the advice is going to be reflective of that, I suppose.
Correct. And in reflection, especially as a first-time buyer where I didn't have a lot of experience with the buying process, the onus is all on you, felt like. It's all on the buyer. You got to do your own research, learn the ropes, ask for friends' advice. But everyone's experience is different. So thinking back on that experience, those are the things that stood out for me.
Yeah, definitely there is some ownership that must be taken by the buyer, and so that's where actually having the clear process to follow through slice is important, because as much as you rely on your partners, they're not the ones that are putting the money down, they're not the ones making that final decision.
No, definitely not.
What about in terms of due diligence, like looking through the legal documents? It sounds like you didn't even go subject to due diligence. You didn't obviously put a huge amount of focus around looking at those documents.
No. I remember I went to the open home. Obviously, there were all the standard material that the real estate agent would provide you, including the limb report. I had no idea how to read the limb report or what it meant. I don't think I even engaged in any legal advice at that stage.
Yeah, not until you realised you need one to settle on the purchase.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I didn't pick up, for example, it was a freehold property. However, there was a very long driveway. A lot of the land area was actually half share of that driveway.
Yeah.
You know, so things that's very obvious to me now, but it was not obvious at the time.
Yeah. So part of the driveway was not actually yours to use. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I think I had the right to use it, but it was a shared between me and the neighbour at the time.
Yeah, so that's an easement. So, but yeah, it's just having those understandings, I guess, understanding what your rights and obligations relating to the property were.
No clue at the time.
Yeah, yeah. In hindsight, it'd be good to have a bit more support there. But, you know, we live and we learn. On that note, I guess I'm thinking about the offer that you've put through and the due diligence that you have and haven't done. Insurance as well, did you consider that?
No, not at all. Didn't even.
Any challenges, or did it just work out in the end?
I think it just worked out in the end.
Yeah.
It was a very standard 70s home.
Whereabouts was it?
It was on the North Shore in Glenfield area.
Yeah, I know where you are.
But what was interesting is a couple of years after we moved in, we actually found a mini sinkhole in the back of the property. Now, the property was sitting on a very steep hill. It was North Shore, right?
Yeah.
And every time when it rains, the hole would get a little bit bigger.
No.
Pretty scary situation.
This is like horror movie stuff. You know, in those movies when all of a sudden, like, there's a big natural disaster or something occurring and then the road splits and someone's like hanging on to the edge of the pavement?
Yeah.
It's time for a segment we're calling Roast My Home Hunt. It's time to roast, don't take it to heart. When we learn from your mistakes, we all get smart.
Because it's sitting on such a steep hill, every time when it rains, it will get a stream of, like a river. Next door to the house. And our neighbour further down on the slope, their house was even impacted more.
Yeah, so a paddling pool for a bathroom, a river for a backyard, and a sinkhole. Just to
add to the mix.
Yeah, just to add to the mix. That's wild. I think what's really important for buyers listening now as well is that kind of floodplain risk, that insurance risk now should be front of mind, hopefully, for more people than ever, in terms of whether it's flooding, you know, we've seen that in Hawke's Bay, whether it's LA fires. There's a lot going on in that space, and it is your responsibility as the buyer to actually look at that risk.
Absolutely.
Because whether or not you fall through the sinkhole, the question is, that's, problem A, but then problem B, does the next buyer come through and want to buy a house with a sinkhole?
Exactly.
You know? I don't know that you started out with a great deal of knowledge is what I'm hearing in the property space, because there were some interesting decisions made on that first home. But now you're obviously founder of Relab, which is in the property space and property insight space. What's that journey looked like, and also how does that impact the way that you now look to buy property today? Obviously, you've come a long way, we like to think.
Yes. Well, there are a couple of main drivers behind Relab. I have a very, very awesome co-founder, Leon. He's very much in the tech space. He used to be with the Auckland Council, so he really understood the property data, how to work with the data, and how to bring everything together. Also, after our first home experience, my wife entered into the real estate work. So I watched her help her clients struggle with fragmented information. Obviously, she wanted to do a good job, and as an agent that's starting out, her work was to help with customers, who have all these needs. So she would go through 10 different websites, trying to consolidate information, put together in a pack for her client at the time. Just very, very frustrating process, time consuming too. So those were the reasons that made us think, hey, why don't we build a platform that consumes information and data from different sources, and people who need to use it on a day-to-day basis can subscribe and become a customer of ours.
Yeah. And so most of those customers, sometimes buyers, but also agents are jumping in there to check out the data, and some of that data as well. I've been using the tool for a while, and some of that data is around valuation data, also quickly looking at kind of some of the data relating to the different legal documents. And I think really what is quite useful is also kind of getting a sense of what things have sold for in areas around it. From a buyer perspective, I think that's super powerful, because a lot of people don't know the true value until you've done a building report. So you see the valuation data, you see something on homes.co.nz, which is worse because it's less accurate. Not trying to shaft homes.co.nz, but it's like there's all this data out there, and none of it actually means that much until you see what property actually sells for and what the building report is, whether or not there is a sinkhole in the backyard that's going to reflect the price potentially.
Yes.
So actually having that visibility of what properties in the area are selling for can be really useful. What similar properties are selling for can be really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when we were first looking at building Relab, I had experience of investing in shares, right? At the time, I was buying and selling some shares in the US, and before you make any investment decision, you would obviously study the market, study the offer.
But not when you're buying property,
Not
right?
when you're buying property. And you'd do due diligence on the company, its board, its leadership, its competitors, and how they've been doing in terms of revenue in previous years. If you talk to any serious share investors and going, hey, what made you invest or not in any shares, they'll tell you, here are the things you need to do. But I just find when I talk to my friends and mates at the time, a property investment is largely just driven by emotions from the spouse or the situation you found yourself in. And
you did it yourself.
I did it myself.
You didn't rely on the data.
Sleepwalked into the...
Yes. Sleepwalked into your first home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those were all, I guess, learnings that we hope by providing Relab, which is a platform with all the data that's needed for due diligence, and it's unbiased data too. We don't manipulate or change data because our users request us to. From time to time, we do get such requests, but we try to present a full picture.
Yeah.
And it's up to the home buyer, the investor, or the agents to do their own due diligence.
Yeah, and that's where obviously you can use data and you can leverage data massively, but you do need that legal advice when you are buying. So it's about working with the lawyer and working with the data, and those are the two most important things, I think, for buyers. Everyone gets that you need enough money to buy the home, so you need to obviously get your finances sorted. But when it comes to making the right decision, that's where data and a lawyer become the most important.
Yes.
elements.
Well, I think you might find some people not realizing you might need pre-approval before you go into an auction situation.
Don't get me started, Knight. We do. But actually, someone very close to me recently,
Yes.
was about to go to auction, not having that pre-approval, not knowing what their finance was. So, of course, that is a big element, but it's a little bit more understood than actually. Element 1 is, can I afford it? Element 2 is, should I be spending this on that? And point 2 is probably, almost more important, because that's when it's the investment frame of mind. Like, you wouldn't invest in shares blind unless you're Knight and you're buying your first home. But so why would you wouldn't get married blind, so why would you invest in property without that clear picture as to whether or not the property that you're buying is a good investment? And that's where the data and the way that you're pulling things together, I think, is super helpful for people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Amy. I think here in New Zealand, we have the number 8 why mentality. It's great that we can rely on ourselves instead of relying on others in many, many things in life. But I think when it comes to making an important investment decision, buying a home, we should change our mentality to seek professional advice or use Slice or someone who's done this before, who are providing service to many, many others, and just follow the right process. You pay for the service, but it's definitely worthwhile. I think there is a bit of mentality shift that's required, especially in the first home buyer space.
Yeah, we often find that people aren't necessarily getting that professional advice, or they're getting it too late. As you kind of said, you didn't realise you needed a lawyer until quite late in the process, or actually they're relying on people that maybe have bought property before, but the market is constantly changing, the law is constantly changing, the climate, the insurance climate is constantly changing.
Healthy homes.
Yeah, so what was true 5 years ago isn't true today, and that's why experts are paid, because they are experts and they're keeping up to date. They're required to undertake professional development and be very current in their industry expertise, as opposed to, your uncle who invested in 20 properties 50 years ago, or whatever it is. Maybe not 50 years ago if he's your uncle, but you get the picture. So we spend a lot of time at the barbecue, at a barbecue with family and friends, and we rely on that. And it's great to have opinion, but sometimes you do need that expertise.
Yes.
And buying property is one of those times.
Now, speaking of expertise advice, I think a while ago, I was just browsing on Facebook, and I came across a post in the Kiwi First Home Buyer group. And that's someone, I assume was a first home buyer, who took a screenshot of a home he or she was about to go and see, and it had a valuation range or a number, and they were asking the whole group for advice. Hey, this is what this website say this property is worth. What do you guys think? And then that's generated a whole lot of debate. Everyone had opinion on it. Some say you can trust that number. Others say you got to go to 4 other different websites and take an average. And someone went really, really analytical on that. What's your thought on that?
My thoughts on that is that that's not the right way to go about it, in terms of giving so many people that you don't know power over such a massive decision. Like, they don't have credibility, they don't have expertise. It's the same challenge we face with content creators now, to be honest, is everyone's a financial advisor on Facebook and Instagram, but they're not. They haven't, I've been practicing as a financial advisor. I've got a background in law. I wish that there was a requirement, if you were talking about budgeting or finance or, buying property, to actually have some sort of certification, to be honest. So I think that the danger in that is you've just asked 100 people, for sure 50% of those people are trolls and have never bought property in their life. For all you know, they just watch property markets and they have a gambling addiction. You're just asking anyone. They're just commentators, and they're often not actors, because that's why they have time to comment in those groups. So that's
good advice.
So I think that's super dangerous. But the other piece is that there are not all data is created equal, and so going to lots of those websites isn't necessarily useful, or I don't know what they put up either, but that's not always useful. So there's, I think, working out where that data is good. It's good at Relab. Some of the bank data that they provide in terms of valuations is accurate, or at least more accurate too, and it'll often be a range. But that's not always the case with online data. And then the other thing that I would say is that there's what the valuation says, but then that valuation means nothing until you see the building report, until you see the legal documentation, and you add those components together. Because if it says 1.5 on the document, we've seen things like that have weather tightness issues, and the CV, also CVs aren't current, but the CV will say like 1.6 million and they're selling it for 1 million, and that's because it's a leaky home. So like you can't escape that challenge that actually that valuation data needs to still take into consideration your building report, your legal documents and things like that. You need a full picture. And you're not going to get that from asking Tom, Dick and Sally in the Facebook group. I'm sure there are some really educated people in there, don't get me wrong, and there's some great investors, but you can't be sure of that, and you don't know which opinions are valid and which aren't. Yeah,
it's a great advice. I think practicing discernment is important, especially, when we are faced with such a
discernment. What a good word.
Yeah. And I think checking people who give you the advice, their credibility, their track record, do they have agenda or not? It's really important.
That agenda piece is really important. Like I think for buyers as well, lawyers are your objective party. Even your broker and your financial advisor, and we love them. We have advisors that we set our buyers up with, but they are getting paid by the bank when you go ahead and purchase. So they are incentivized by you making a purchase. When you look at agents, and even sometimes people will use a buyer's agent, generally we try to do a lot of what the buyer's agents do for free via our platform, but people do use that from time to time. And I think the challenge with that is actually they're still getting a fee out of any purchase that you make. So when they find that house, they're getting a fee directly relating to that purchase. And so that's where, again, you're missing that objective nature. Whereas Slice, the platform is operating objectively, and also the lawyers are the other objective operators. So I think you want to look for people that don't have anything to gain from giving you advice.
No, that's great. I hope Slice was around during the time I was looking for my first home, but that was had a few very, very close calls.
No more sinkholes though anymore. No. Did we get rid of that property?
We in the end we did remedial work, and we no longer own the home.
Yeah. Sold the house did you just sort of fill the home up? The hole, not the home up.
We informed the council, and they actually came and did what they had to do.
Nice. Yeah. It's good when you can get the council to pay for your mistakes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Hey, well, before we go, I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Which is, Knight, there's lots of other questions, because obviously both being in the technology space and building platforms, I've been asking questions offline.
Cool.
But this one is a fun one, which is, if that first home had a doorbell and that doorbell played a theme song, what song would it play?
Ooh. It did have a doorbell, which was one of those ones you can twist, the old, not a powered one.
Yeah.
Don't Stop Believing.
Don't stop believing. The next house will be better.
Next house will be better. Yes. You got to believe in this, because, you're stuck with me now, so you have
I was thinking with a leaky bathroom, it was going to be something like, "It's raining men," or like something like...
Yeah, all that, yes.
Was something rain related, but hey. Well, congratulations on all the work with Relab. It's an amazing platform, and I'm excited to see you guys continue to grow. And thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Amy. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for joining our community. Please leave an Apple or Spotify review and provide feedback so we can improve our podcast for you. We really appreciate it. Check out the links in today's episode notes to get access to our free resources and your own NZ Home Loans financial advisor. On that note, a quick reminder, Slice the podcast does not provide financial advice, as we're not taking into account your personal circumstances. However, when you join our platform, we have a team of partners like New Zealand Home Loans ready to provide you with financial advice free of charge.